Hey, welcome to the show. It's the open house show with me, Jesse Meadow. This is our second episode, so thanks for joining us. We have a good show today. We're going to be talking a little bit as the enrollment season kicks off. We're going to be talking a little bit about, why choosing independent schools, what we're hearing about why parents are choosing independent schools. We're also going to get into, with COVID going on, we're definitely going to get into the importance of thought sharing, some things that I learned on the road. We've got a great guest today, Director of Enrollment Management, Cameron Steese from down in the Village School of Naples. She's going to join us. We have my partner in crime, Chris Mitchell, also joining us as well. So we're going to have some good discussion, and we hope you enjoy. Let me bring him on now. Hey, guys. How are you? Cameron, welcome.
Thanks so much for having me, Jesse. Excited to be here.
Awesome. Chris, good to see you as always.
Great to be here as always.
Looking like live from South Beach here.
It's all about setting that mental energy, man.
Hey, it's that midday mood. I like it. Okay. Right. Yeah. So, jumping right into it, while we have, Cameron here with us, it's a good, I like to try to take advantage of the guests that are on the show to give us some insight and some knowledge that we might not have been able to get. So before we get into why independent schools, I always find it interesting, coming from a boarding school background, the differences with day schools versus boarding schools and the similarities. But Cameron, I'm sure you can speak a lot more to that. What were some of the differences that you found moving from St. Timothy's, a boarding school, Maryland, coming down to Florida, now you're at a day school. What were some of those management differences that you might have noticed?
I would say for one of the things that really stuck out to me when I first came down here was the pace. Everything happens at a day school from 7:30 in the morning till 3:15, 3:30. Car line's done, the day is done, but oh boy, all that has happened in that span of time. And that's very much the same thing for admissions at a day school, I would say. It's a much more rapid of a pace. And another thing that really stood out to me is the traditional calendar of people applying and when they come into the cycle and when they enroll is completely different at a day school, particularly down in Florida, from what I understand about my more northern friends about their day school kind of track of admissions. So it's those are two things that really stood out to me almost as soon as I came down here, was just that pacing and that calendar are completely different and out the window, and just very, very different than certainly the Mid-Atlantic, and I would imagine the Northeast as well.
Yeah, I mean, we had I know when we were at Montverde, we most boarding schools will have that, mid-year option. And for sure, day schools have that too. But when you're really going after those international markets, like, Brazil, they end their year in December. So they're perfect for coming on in January to start their year. That whole piece is missing. It's just more of a steady pace because they're all local students. They might already be enrolled in a private school or maybe public school. So it's really just kind of fall to fall, where that international piece brings a lot of those different timings, different calendar years for their school years.
Absolutely.
What are some similarities that you might have not noticed that seem to be, riding the same line between enrollment management for day versus boarding?
Sure. I would say that the biggest similarity is really you're still bringing prospective students and prospective parents that boutique experience. During my tenure at St. Timothy's School, we really focused on that because as an independent school, really starting off in the admissions process, you should go that extra mile. You should meet a family on a Saturday. You should schedule a Tuesday night tour if the only time works is 7 p.m. That hunger, and I think providing that boutique experience is very similar to my time in a boarding school as it is here. And I think in a day market, there's a level of competitiveness for those same students that you still find, even though you're not necessarily competing at a fair for students. You are still competing, and there is still that local competition that you should keep an eye on it and be on the lookout for. So I think that hunger and really just putting that boutique experience right out front and really meeting families where they are and helping them through the process is very similar to what I've done and what a lot of us do.
Yeah, that's so true, and being able to tailor that kind of experience, especially based off of what your programs are, really makes that independent school experience unique. Being able to tailor that admissions process. I know when I was young and was searching around for schools, or I wasn't, my parents were, I was just kind of riding along with them. We went to Montfort Academy, where I ended up going to school, and that's one of those things that made it special. And these days and age, transitioning to our next topic, it's such a values, like the parents of today, why they're choosing different schools is there's a lot to say about values-based uniqueness, different programs that you offer, different ways that you connect, the community involvement, but really all of that comes into, are they principally values-based? And independent schools can really offer that, especially in the enrollment process and the admissions process, when they get to meet the school for the first time, get on campus, kind of see that. When I was a student, obviously you have your memories and friends that are lifelong friends. And I was a boarder, so that's a little bit different of experience as a day student. We lived with each other. So they did have the day experience compared to the boarding experience, but we're lifelong friends. Look at Chris and I right now, we're on a live stream together. And we met when I was 12 and he was 14. So these relationships build over time. And I think that the uniqueness of what an independent school can offer is a lot of what they can do. And a lot of the reason why my parents chose it and why I'm so passionate about advocating for them. Right. From your perspective, what you're seeing down there, or maybe what you've heard in both locations, anywhere you've worked, from parents and feedback, why do you hear independent schools so much? What is the biggest draw for them?
I think, what I've noticed is just that unprecedented access to faculty, to staff, to programming, that you really don't receive the same sort of access when you're at a public school. Sure, you might have a handful of really dedicated teachers that you really connect with, but by and large, at an independent school, you're connecting pretty much with every single one of your teachers. You're going to get that extra help after school. Your parents feel comfortable scheduling a parent conference in the middle of the week with their grade school students. So I think for me, it's really that access, and that is such a gift for students. I know I always give this anecdote, but when I was in college, of course, there's professors' office hours, right? And I loved one of my English professors, and I was like, oh, I really want to go and talk with Professor Benfey about my, latest take on Herman Melville's book, because I really wanted to talk to him about it because I loved his class so much. But then in the back of my mind, there was always this thought, why would he want to talk to me? Why would he want to hear my opinion on this? And students who go to independent schools don't have that hesitation. Will have that connection with their teachers, and they have that connection with what they're studying, and they will go after those different opportunities because of all of those years of having that access and having teachers who really know each student individually. Here at the Village School, we always talk about known, nurtured, and loved as one of our hallmark of our school. And I think that students really do feel that, and I think parents really do feel that. And I think that is the biggest difference between independent schools and public schools, is just that access and the fact that each of our students really are known, nurtured, and loved.
No, that's so true. Go ahead, Chris.
I was going to say, I would agree with that. I think that the community aspect of independent schools is a huge attraction. And of course, bringing some data and surveys into this, how are our generation of parents making decisions? Of course, academics are always a cornerstone in any independent school. But, they're thinking about, how is that custom experience for my child going to be? How is the community around my child going to be? Is this independent school going to be able to support and foster and grow? Say my child has interest in the fine arts, which we know public schools are continuing to cut budgets on. Do they have other interests that this school and the community can help foster, while at the same time provide them academics? And it's very interesting when you look at these surveys and reports. It's not that our generation's discounting academics, because that's still a part of it, but it's not just the end all be all. Schools, 10, 20 years ago would always college preparatory school, like we get our kids into these acceptance rates. This is what it is. And it's not that that's not a primary, or not that that's not important, but other factors now have higher value with these generation of parents than say it used to. And so I think that is how, you're asking the question of why independent schools now. I think that even now they have a greater attraction than they did 20, 30 years ago because of what is missing or lacking in our public school systems. And, Cameron, especially in Florida now, you moved down here from, obviously a different state, but in, public schools obviously are continuing to try to figure out its pathway and how they can continue to provide that education. And this isn't a, us against public schools or independence against public school situation. This is when parents are making a decision on what's best for their child, really creating that custom experience and providing a community that's going to help them. And I think that is something as, marketers, or somebody that helps our clients create enrollment funnels of how best do we attract those parents because it's more of a matchmaking situation than selling them. Right. And so that is kind of our job, is matching that family to the right school that they're looking to have their child go into. And I think that's what separates independent schools, because if your only option is public school, that is what you have. Right. And you've got to make the best of it as a family, versus when you're looking at independent schools, not all of them are created equal in what they offer or they excel at. And so I think that is another reason why independent schools, I think, are getting a different look from this generation. I won't say a different look, because for a lot of people, this is their first experience. We all have legacy type of folks that believe in what independent schools do. But I think you're getting another look from this generation for independent schools, because they're looking for that community and that crafted experience.
I would also add to that, Chris, that there's a big focus now, more so than when we were growing up, on that social emotional learning piece.
Yes.
And that social emotional health. I know here at the Village School, we have a curriculum called Responsive Classroom that starts in the pre-K3 program and really carries on through to that 12th grade. Because again, the thought process is, you can get a 1600 on your SATs. You can have all A's in all of your AP courses. If you get off to college and you don't have the stress coping skills, or you don't have the best study habits, let's say, or you haven't learned different tools for how to manage test anxiety. Those things are going to follow you throughout the rest of your life. And so I think that focus on academics is still very important to parents. But I think with the upcoming generations, we're seeing that I not only want my child to get into a great college and have a wonderful career, I also want them to be socially and emotionally healthy when they throughout their life. So I think that's a new, not a new angle, not to say that other parents didn't want that, but it's a new focus. Whereas in the past, I don't think it was so much at the front.
I would 100% agree with that. Jesse and I've had these offline conversations where I've seen this trend where, even in our day, like, schools would prepare you for how they wish the world was. I feel like schools are now shifting to, they're preparing our students for how the world actually is.
Correct. Yeah,
right. And I think that is also, a point that differentiates independent schools from others.
Absolutely.
A key advantage that they could have, at least when I was seeing it as an employee compared to when I was a student, I took advantage of it as a student. I didn't know any different. Because I was 12 when I started. So I didn't know that you didn't have these personal connections, this individual attention that you can get at an independent school, that my friends at public school weren't getting that, and it's not anyone's fault. It's just the nature of the industry, the structure of it. And, when you talk about these values-based, when you talk about, getting individual education, social, emotional education, you're able to do that when you have lower teacher ratios. You're able to do that when you've got counselors throughout the school, when you've got initiatives and priorities on a school's mission to invest in those kind of things for the students, and you're able to get those one-on-one attentions. I always notice, everyone's graduation's a little emotional, but when you get to those small group, those small numbers independent schools. Like it's very emotional. You connect. You went through things all year individually with these students, and that's a rare find. And it goes to both of your points about that community and how you teach them more than just what's found in a book, because you're able to have that kind of attention and that capability.
Absolutely.
Which, by the way, you just graduated your first class, which I think was 12, right?
Yes. Yeah.
That's exciting.
Yeah, just this past June. I have to say, I feel incredibly fortunate and really very lucky to be at the Village School for a number of reasons. But one and two of which, I guess, are number one, the incredibly strong word of mouth we have in the community. I just did a new parent survey, and around, I think, 70% of our respondents had heard about us from a friend or from a coworker. And so just that word of mouth, they always talk about that. Jesse, all about that world, word of mouth, word of mouth, word of mouth. And it really is a unicorn. You can't, if you don't have it, you can't find it. So I think that really speaks to the strength of our community here at the Village School. And to your point, graduating our first class, a lot of the growth that we experienced as a school happened very organically. We used to graduate in our students in 8th grade. So we just added the high school. We just graduated our first class. And it was a group of parents who really wanted an upper school experience at the Village School for their students. So I think that's very powerful, the fact that even your parents are coming together and not wanting their 12 students to leave and really leading the charge on starting an upper school. So the TVS 12, incredibly proud of them. They got into, I think it was over 40 different colleges and universities. They received, I believe it was around $1 million at the end of the day in scholarships from different colleges. They are all in college and doing incredibly well. Our next upcoming class is a little bit bigger. We think we have 18, so we're kind of keeping that snowball effect.
Got to get a new building.
Yeah. Well, we have a new building. We actually have a new upper school building, but we're looking to increase our athletic footprint and adding some buildings in the future. So hopefully that comes down the pike.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. Congrats to that first class. I'm sure that was a big moment in the school's history. That's definitely sure.
And it happened during 2020. So those
always be remembered.
Always, forever and always.
Can we just all agree to forget this year when it's over? Like, just not even acknowledge it in the history books. It's just.
I have a birthday coming up in November, and I'm like, really? I don't really know. Let's do this birthday again.
Yeah, exactly.
This past year again.
That's so funny. So that was some great stuff on why independent school. There was a lot of points I didn't think about. I again, even as a student and then coming back as an employee, you just take for granted those close relationships that you have, that individual attention that comes, that really incorporates into every other topic that's meaningful for parents of today, the new generation of parents. Getting that values-based education, getting the socio-emotional education really stems from having the capability to, influence a student or impact them so closely. But in this day and age, obviously, the next part of the show, transitioning is as hard as that may be, to, thought sharing. And another great thing I found about independent schools, and I know that, I'm not saying public schools don't do this. I just think to the extent, where an individual school will invest in their students, invest in programs to make themselves better, have a better product for their students and families. I think that on a large scale, associations, national, local, regional schools themselves, they understand the impact of the industry and how outside forces can really sway how much they're able to keep enrollment going and really express that value of why independent schools. And I think I think that the thought sharing that goes on in independent schools is really unlike many industries. I think it's, like you were saying, there's competitors, but at the same time, those same competitors will be on a call sharing information about what's working, what's not working, so that they can both survive certain situations. There's nothing more pertinent, at least in many years, as COVID. and how we're addressing it. This is uncharted territory for anyone, whether you're, a school with hundreds of years of history and precedents to go back on, or you're a brand new school. You're tackling this the same way. So, with that in mind, I was thinking in my head where all this began, and, this piece that I put together about thought sharing, it really made me think from the travels on the road where we met, and I had to dig back, and it looks like, I think our first trip was in Spain in 2016. And yeah, we went, we were in Madrid, we were in Barcelona. Yeah. Oh man, that was the first time I heard about St. Timothy's. And, yeah. We had so much fun, and we go out, and a lot of the pieces about how we go out, we enjoy each other's company, we build relationships among colleagues. But in doing that, we're sharing. I learned so much about the independent school world and what different schools do and some of the different programs. And you walk into that school, that fair, and you have all these schools around, and you're just like, all right, I gotta get these kids, Right. And then you start to talk to them, and you realize, this kid is a perfect fit for this school. They have a huge marine biology program. Here's an art school, here's an athletic school, here's an academic school, here's a school in the north, here's a school in the south. And when you put together all of those different, programs and different mission statements, if you will, we're not as much competition as we used to be. And now it's a little bit more of, we kind of have our unique offerings to give a broad spectrum of independent schools and have that choice for parents. And I think the second trip, I don't think you were on the whole trip of Vietnam, but I remember being at dinner once in Vietnam right before you went to Beijing and Hong Kong. And that was the last time I saw you. That was in 2016. So, years ago. I missed the travel. But
yeah, travel. I mean, no one's really traveling right now. No. So I guess we kind of exited stage left at a time. But yeah, the travel piece was really huge. And I think those connections that you make with people, Jesse, it was funny that you said that it was just about a year ago, because I got a reminder on Facebook of when we went to go see Madrid play.
Oh, yeah.
In Bernabeu. So anyway, so that just popped up. It was you, me, and Mikkel or Lucia or something. So those connections that you make with people, and you're absolutely right. It's an industry where there's a certain amount of competition, but there's also a really strong camaraderie. And when you've been to a tapas restaurant with Jesse and he announces that I don't really know what's on the menu and I have a shellfish allergy. Hopefully it works out, and you say, oh dear, you bond over these things, you remember these people, and you really connect. So I think I definitely miss the travel piece, and I miss that seeing people on a more regular basis, in a day environment. Of course, we have FCIS, which was a great conference last year. They're doing it digitally this year. So I think that'll be great. But you don't have as much of that kind of getting to know people, just schools that are a mile down the road, as you did when you worked for a boarding school that traveled.
Right. But getting to that FCIS, it's that's kind of the next piece of it. Is obviously you build relationships amongst each other, amongst admissions professionals, which is a pretty transient job, relevant to other professions. So you get to mingle, you get to move, you get to meet people, you build relationships. But on the other side of that, schools talking amongst themselves and then having the associations organize that for you. There is a strong Enrollment Management Association, National Association of Independent Schools, and there's a few others. You have your local organizations. I'm familiar with FCIS because we're from Florida, but they really play a major role in this piece. Especially navigating the unknown. Normally, it's just navigating a normal year. What are different trends? But now you're really seeing a huge influx of data. Reports, surveys, trends following. I mean, how are we navigating this as an industry? And, the associations have done a very good job at trying to give as much information, use themselves as a platform to kind of communicate with each other, especially, back when it was first going on. How are we going to finish out the year? What's going to, what does summer look like? How are we going to do things in the fall? What's working at other schools? I know you were on a podcast last April because you guys were one of the first to do digital virtual open houses, right?
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
We were, so if I'm going to remember the timeline, because all those months in my house kind of run together, but I sat in on a webinar that the Enrollment Management Association had put on, and it was all about just that, kind of how to navigate in this digital landscape, how to get information out there. And for me, it was about continuing to build enrollment, but also retain all these newly enrolled students. You have to show them that you're still there, that you're still teaching, that you're still engaged, that you're not this, you haven't sold anyone a bill of goods.
Right.
So that was the focus was twofold for me, obviously increasing awareness about our school and encouraging those who are still looking to consider us, but then also to retain all of the students that we had enrolled for the following year. So I sat in on this webinar. I believe Hans Mundahl ran it, and it was all about how to host virtual open events, kind of tricks of the trade, all of that. So the governor made the decision to close essentially the day before we were coming back from spring break. We closed, and the next week we put on our first open house event. So we were really kind of right out the gate with it. And then it got kind of fun, I have to say. I kind of enjoyed it. I was like, oh, maybe I should have been a CNN broadcaster. So we kind of got to enjoy it a little bit. It was different. It was a different landscape. I think the first one I was so nervous and like, but then you got really used to it and coming up with fun programming. Like we did coffee chats for different grades, tackling different subject matters. We continued with the open houses. We had a faculty and student panel that we did. We had a current parent panel that we invited prospective parents to, and newly enrolled parents. So it was a way to get very creative. I think we did in total about 13 programs, I want to say. And of those 13 programs, I think we had about 144 people view it, which there were some that were repeats, but we had a lot of engagement. And then when we created the virtual open house page on our website, people would go back and review that there as well. So it was really, it was tricky, but it was also kind of fun. So, so a new way to promote yourself out there.
Absolutely. And you know what? I don't foresee that one going anywhere anytime soon. But even when things, let's say, get to a normal place or somewhat normal place, I don't think that some of these creative ways that we were able to interact, especially with this generation of parents, is going to go away. Those digital aspects are going to be here to stay. Obviously, you want to get the family and have the capability of bringing the family onto campus, because there is something to be said about not so much selling, but having them feel the environment. You can really, when you see the kids moving about campus, when you walk around the campus, you see the trees, you see the buildings, you meet some of the people, the staff, you really get to feel the place. That in digital gets a little bit lost. You can see the beauty, obviously, you can have a great idea, but that feeling, that emotional connection, it's a little bit difficult to relay. But I think that, we're going to be creatively putting digital things together, for families, no matter what department. Chris, you were in development at Montfort, and you went to, development conferences where you got to build some relationships and share things. How do you think that's working, with today's day and age?
Well, first, I'm happy. Godspeed to all my counterparts in admissions and in development right now and advancement. My heart goes out to them right now, trying to obviously meet advancement goals and fundraise through this. And I think the good thing about what's going on from a thought leadership standpoint is the sharing, the open sharing and the free sharing of information and how schools are facing these challenges. I think the advantages that of us working with a lot of clients is that we're seeing in real time the challenges they're facing and being able to kind of help guide other clients that are now facing similar situations. And I think when you have these associations, to the point earlier about being able to jump on a webinar and engage in content is very important. And I think that for an industry to try to navigate anything, especially one that is constantly changing, you need associations like this to be able to help channel that thought leadership and help schools improve. We were having a conversation before we came on about how, it is independent schools, there is this traditionalist mentality, and, change is not always the quickest. And I think, especially with new professionals into the industry, these associations help them get a leg up, understand what's going on, and get them pretty quickly. When I came into this, I'd come in from a fundraising background, but not in the independent school world. And so going to CASE and all these other conferences, I was able to really get an idea and a better understanding of how the principles I already had, or the techniques, how they apply them to advancement. And the same thing can be said about enrollment. So I think as we continue to move through this COVID world that we find ourselves in, obviously we've already started talking about retention efforts, and how to keep some of these families that might have come in because of public schools not really having their stuff together. And then how does that set us up for the, one of the things not a lot of people are talking about, there's a few, but what is the long-term economic impact to this? When does that really catch up to us in independent schools? Obviously continuing to work through that and make sure that people are continuing to share in what they're experiencing, because your pitfall might save someone else, right? And so continuing to do that. I did have a question for you, Cameron, real quick, based on the last conversation we just had. What do you think, based on some of the things that independent schools have put in place, virtual tours as an example, what do you think is going to be hanging around? Like, what do you think is now like a permanent fixture of how we operate because of, like I said, virtual school, open houses might be a fixture or whatnot, but like, what are you seeing that is like, yeah, this might stick around?
Yeah.
I really think that virtual open houses, having those kind of virtual events and not just limiting it to open houses, I think those are going to be around for a long, long time. I think that, for even though we're not a boarding school, here in Collier County, specifically in Naples, we have a ton of people moving here all of the time. And they have no way of engaging with you if they're up in Michigan and they're just moving in January and they're not going to come visit beforehand because they already own their house. So I really think that there will, even after things return to quote unquote normal, I think there's going to still be a real need and a real presence of these virtual events, not only for, like I said, boarding schools, but particularly for day schools where you have a high influx of people moving from all around the world. I think that's gonna be a lasting effect, because people crave an opportunity to engage with you. And if you are a busy investment banker and you couldn't make the in-person open house, it's really nice for you to be able to go online and view it later whenever you can. So I think just to reiterate, I think the digital landscape will remain, and will still be happening moving forward.
Yeah, I feel like it all, also like forced some schools that were hesitant into it.
Yeah.
Some schools that were trying to, grasp on to the way things were done, now doing it, and, they were forced to do it. And now that they see that it works, it might have sped up, the schools using digital tools and assets.
Yeah, absolutely. Good time to invest in Zoom or
no, that was 8 months ago.
Where's the next one? Where's the next one?
Yeah, exactly. What's the next latest and greatest?
So, Cameron, as we kind of focus a little bit, I like to talk about, different regions, because, when we're on our conversations with schools across the country, there are some definite similarities. COVID's affecting everyone. Digital implications are affecting everyone. But locally, there's a lot of things that are going on that may not be the same from place to place. So we always like hearing some different insights. What are some enrollment issues or opportunities, I guess, that you're kind of seeing in your area? How are things happening, I guess, Southwest Florida, or maybe just Naples specifically?
Sure. So a majority of our families are from Naples. We do have some from Lee County that come down from Fort Myers, but by and large, our families are here in Collier County, specifically in Naples. So I would say that a real opportunity is that it seems that every other person in the continental United States would like to live in Naples. So people are moving down here in droves. The real estate market is absolutely booming down here. And, you know, contrary to popular belief, they're not all $20 million houses on the water. There are affordable condos, et cetera. So you're really kind of getting a whole group of people that are really moving down here in droves, as I said. So that's a huge opportunity for us. I think something that is a little challenging is I think that all of our, not all, but certainly a large percentage of our clientele are new to independent schools and are new to private schools and are not as necessarily savvy as some of our other parents in other regions, I would argue. So you have to do a lot of education, and sometimes you have to continue to educate people. You know, you are paying tuition, but if someone doesn't pick up your phone call on the third ring, that doesn't mean that it's not worth the tuition. It's just kind of that expectation setting of putting in place some reasonable expectations for independent schools and educating those families. I would also say that we spoke about this earlier, really the calendar is very different in that there is no calendar. It's pretty funny, you know, well, we did 53% of our enrollment during the months of July and August this year, and we enrolled 116 kids by the start of school. So we did a huge amount of enrollment in July and August. My coworker Maggie and I were both really very, very busy scheduling tours, getting people through the process. So I bring that all up. It was a little up from where it was. Well, it was pretty much double from where it was last year. But even still, having 25% of your enrollment take place in July and August in a normal non-COVID year is very odd to me, the calendar that I'm used to. So there are definitely some unique opportunities. I'm I guess a little stubborn. I keep trying to kind of make people adhere to my internal calendar of what I think admission should be. And I say that not really making them, but, you know, for instance, we had a couple evening programs that were kind of sparsely attended, whereas most of the time in the Mid-Atlantic, those would be when parents would come as after to an event. We're looking at doing some Saturday open houses similarly to get people on campus, you know, giving a nod to parents who might both work here in the community. So kind of trying to bring some of my traditional calendar events down here and trying to streamline the process. I think that that's been kind of a little bit of a challenge for me in my background, but like I said, if I don't have to do another Saturday open house, that is perfectly fine. Enough of my Saturdays, enough of my weeknights. Like if they don't work, that's fine. But I just kind of internally can't believe that they won't work. So I'm gonna report back for you guys. See what
definitely do that. You know, it was funny when you were talking about you know, how busy you guys were in July and August. We heard that, you know, not every school, but definitely schools that were in a public school situation that they didn't feel had a good handle what was going on, or they were all virtual and they wanted in class, you know, so they had this influx going into it. And it just made me think of what back when I was really young and I was a server and we used to get in the weeds and, you know, you just can never get out. You can never get out. I go home, I sleep, I have nightmares of this. I just think of all these professionals in like July, August, having these nightmares, waking up. I'll be right there. It was
email that person. Oh, did I forget to do this? Oh, what's happening? You know, absolutely. And I waited tables too, Jesse, and it's one of two anxiety dreams I have. I'm either in the weeds and totally overrun and don't know where I am in space and time working at a restaurant, or I'm in a play and I've not studied any of my lines. So I think it's really anxiety inducing, but I hear you. Absolutely. It was a mad rush for sure.
It was interesting to watch in real time. Our clients go from panic to overwhelmment in the weeds, because you had this enrollment shift of like, you know, at one point they were looking at, you know, 10 to 20% of their contracts not being filled. Right. And, you know, worried about what does that mean for the next year? And then you had this, what we're calling now the COVID bounce. And so, retention. I would like to ask as a follow-up, like what are some things that you guys are doing or talking about at this point on helping with that retention? You doubled your enrollment, with those 2 months. And so what are some of the things that you guys are doing for the next few months, especially with re-enrollment around the corner?
Yeah, absolutely. So kind of the bright side that came out of all of this is it really made us rethink our campus and kind of our layout and are we utilizing all of the great outdoor space that we have on campus? So we actually purchased a tent I think we purchased it in like April or May, because I know that there was then a shortage of tents. So we were really happy that we had a tent. So we actually have
That's random, by the way. That's a random time to be short of tents, but okay.
Well, I guess it was because all of these schools were looking to maximize outdoor space for one.
Okay.
So I think like we were kind of at the forefront, and then obviously word about the tents got out, and so all of a sudden everyone's scrambling for a tent. Good thing no one was really getting married then anyway, so there wasn't an overarching need for tents in that arena. So we have an outdoor, a beautiful tent that we have outside. We purchased these cooling devices that are placed at each of the corners that cool the tent underneath the tent between, I think it's 8 and 12 degrees. So we have this great outdoor space. So we've actually been able to host a variety of different parent coffees under the tent. Our development friends are actually leading the charge on that. Before convocation, we were able to have a breakfast under the tent for parents. So really inviting certain groups of parents, having everyone socially distanced and wearing a mask if that's not possible, but having this outdoor space has been really crucial for us to engage with them. Our teachers did a really wonderful job with their open house recently, utilizing a lot of different digital platforms. So that really went well with the parents. So they felt really connected that way. We're also, as a day school, we have transition years that are sometimes more challenging than the other years. So one of those is the pre-K4 program to kindergarten. So we are hosting an event under the tent for those parents to meet the kindergarten teachers, hear about the curriculum, and get them thinking about kindergarten now while they're still well, it's still early. So we're doing that for our 5th to 6th grade and then 8th to 9th grade as well.
That's awesome. You're definitely getting into the season. I know you probably know that now, being here, over a year, but that outdoor space, pretty much from, I would say in a month or two on, like that's why everyone's here in Florida is these next few months coming up. So that's a real great piece to have some events going on that utilizing that outdoor space.
Yeah, absolutely. And just really kind of increasing connections with the parents, just that, you just enrolled your daughter in 6th grade and reach out and follow up and see how you're doing, kind of that connectivity. I think that will be increasing the amount of surveys that we do throughout the year for parent satisfaction and student satisfaction, just to kind of keep an eye on that. I'm in the middle of doing some statistics, and about 40% of our new lower school families came from public school, which is up, I want to say that's up about 15% from where it's been in years past. So really making sure that we're going to keep a lot of those families. Obviously, there are some families that kind of are just doing this for the year, and you know them and you can identify them and you're like, okay, thanks for coming. You hope that they stay, but you know that they're not going to. But we are looking at really doing a full court press to keep as many of those public school families that we've enrolled as possible.
Perfect. Yeah. It's definitely an issue that a lot of schools are going to have. Once the public schools get back to some sort of normalcy, how have you been able to build that value to keep those kids here? Where they understand, hey, I need to invest this because it's worth it for my child. There's a big opportunity there with people, like you said, 40% came from public schools. That's a lot of students that didn't know independent schools before.
Right.
So that's huge. What last topic, I obviously, we always want to talk about COVID-19, how we're handling it and everything that's going on with that. The Village School, obviously kind of at the front end on trying to be creative on how to communicate to current families, reach prospective families. How are things going now that we've started the fall and, the kids are going through things and the teachers are going through things? How is it looking over at the Village School these days? What are some tips you can tell everyone else?
So I'm sorry, tips regarding how things are going, or?
Yeah, like COVID-19 mitigation, some things that are going on with you, some things that maybe surprisingly are working well. I know some of the schools that I've talked to, they were actually surprised at how well the kids are taking to all of it. I know they're always resilient, but I think they're just so happy to be around each other and not stuck at home. They'll do whatever it takes. Yeah. What has it been like over at the Village School?
Yeah, absolutely, Jesse. I mean, here in Collier County, we very much have strong differing opinions either way regarding mask usage, COVID-19, all of those topics are, generally pretty heavily debated in our area. So for us, it was really about striking a balance. And a lot of the families that I toured, the public school came out with an edict that all those students had to wear masks all day long. So these parents were not interested in having their child wear masks all day long. So we have, we created the plexiglass shields so that when they were in class, they could take off the mask. When they're in passing or on their way to the PE class or the cafeteria, they have to wear their masks. And then when they're outside playing on the playground, they don't have to unless they're, really closely huddled in little groups. So parents really liked that balance that we struck. I would say also the utilization of the acreage that we have. We also, in addition to the tent, we created outdoor classroom spaces, and we are setting up whiteboards, the electronic outdoor whiteboards out there. So getting the kids outside more, I think, has really been a positive thing. And, so many of the parents were so, kind of upset that their child had to wear a mask at all. And the kids are so resilient. They really, honestly, a majority of them don't seem to care, Yeah. And when you think about it, our little pre-K 3 and pre-K 4 friends, they just learned that, you have to wear clothes out in public. So they're not, you tell them to put a mask on, they're like, yeah, okay, fine. I have to wear pants. I have to wear a mask. So I think that the resilience of the students and how adaptable everyone's been. And I will say how everyone's just really followed the rules and just really kind of, even if they don't necessarily agree with all of them, everyone's really come together and followed the guidelines. So we're really grateful for our community in general, but certainly with their support and how we've handled this.
Yeah, it's been really optimistic to hear how the kids are doing, how schools are handling it. Everyone's taking it seriously, no matter what their beliefs are at home. They're really taking advantage of being able to be around everyone again, and that's really good to hear that's happening down there as well. Guys, keep up the good work with mitigating all of those. I mean, every day I'm sure there's a new challenge that you need to address. But we had some good discussion today about why independent schools, and a lot of that goes into a lot of the value that we'll be able to bring to families. When mitigating something like this. You also go on to the thought sharing aspect of things where everyone's kind of communicating to each other what's working, what's not working. This is the direction we need to go, and maybe this will work for you. And I think as an industry as a whole, they're in good shape, all things considered. And we just got to kind of continue that way. So we'll wrap it up there. I really appreciate you coming on, Cameron. Chris, as always, a pleasure. Thank you so much. We'll see you next week at the same time, same place.
All right. Thank you both so much. It's been fun.
All right.
Bye.